right, welcome to episode 38 of Security Matters with the Coffee Squad. I'm Will with Jake, and we have a special guest today, Doug Wright. We'll get into him in just a second, but first we want to reiterate a little bit about what we do here. We're going to start with what we're drinking, talk about what's going on a little bit around the world, and then we'll jump into the topic of the week. And this week is kind of a Mythbusters type episode with about law enforcement, talking especially about the movies and TVs, what you see, and kind of, saying, hey, that's realistic, or no, that's kind of, not so realistic.
Good, man. So a little less doom and gloom than we've done. I think we had like election rioting, violence. Last week was Christmas shopping, and you put like a big old poop cloud over Christmas and the holidays and ruined everyone's holiday shopping experience. So I'm looking forward to this. Hearing you guys go back and forth. I was never a cop, so here I do love cop movies and cop shows. So it's going to be fun to kind of sit back and listen to you and Doug kind of debunk a lot of stuff in the movies and on TV. And then I'd love to hear like Doug's like funniest or wildest, if he can share it, experience, like something that just blew his mind out, and then yours as well. Like, man, I never thought in a million years something like this would happen. So awesome. Will, introduce everyone to Doug.
All right, so I met Doug probably 2005, I think, in Tennessee at a National Criminal Enforcement Association convention. From there on, we just kept running into each other, multiple training events, Desert Snow up in Virginia, Greensboro, down in Destin, Florida. Actually, Doug rolled me around a little bit up in New York when I was in a wheelchair for my accident, so that was a good time. He presented me with this awesome Iron Warrior Award. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Oh, nice.
Still got this thing sitting on my desk, and this was like the original. This is the OG, so it's heavy. It's like, still bronze and stuff, so that thing's it's good to go. So Doug, he works in Somerville Police Department, former Marine. Well, I guess you don't say former Marine. What is it, a Marine? But I'll let Doug go ahead and give you a little bit about his background. He's got a bachelor's degree, working on his master's degree up at Liberty University. But Doug, go ahead and tell you.
Go Flames.
There you go, man. So I've been in law enforcement for going on 25 years right now, and down in the South Carolina, Charleston area. And I've been very, very blessed by our Lord to let me work up to higher ranks within law enforcement organization. And I could tell you from somebody who's been a canine handler, I spent 10 years as a canine handler, worked highway interdiction for about 3 or 4 years on Interstate 95, taking down some high-level traffickers and criminals that usually don't make it to the top of the food chain in our business when you're one of those guys. So it's kind of an anomaly. I think Will agree with that. We're kind of known to speak our mind, and we live on the edge. Your proactive criminal interdictors and whatnot live on the edge and are the ones out there making things spin and move on a daily basis in our profession. So I was promoted to the assistant chief of police earlier this year of a fairly large law enforcement agency here in South Carolina. Very progressive, fast growing area in the Charleston area. In fact, we're one of the fastest growing in the state. And our geography actually sits in the middle of 3 different counties here in the Low Country, which is down here in Charleston. So a lot of moving and shaking going on. A lot of people moving here because of Boeing and Volvo and some of the other big industry has moved down here in the Charleston area. Obviously, deepest port of entry on the East Coast, second largest port of entry on the East Coast. It's one of the largest exporters ports in the United States and the world, and pretty excited because we have a lot of stuff going on down here. Yeah, that's pretty much me. I spent time in the Marine Corps Reserves. I was in for 6 years. My son's a Marine. My second son just joined the Marine Corps, the Reserves, and got a beautiful daughter who I dropped off at school on the way in, and a beautiful wife. I've been with my high school sweetheart for 28 years. So that's it, man.
That's awesome. So What are you drinking this morning there, Jake? What kind of foo-foo water?
So I'm rocking a Bengal spice tea. And I almost did like some research like you will, like, like where does the name Bengal come from, how they get it, and then like try to explain the aroma flavors like you do with your coffee of like, this has a hint, I'll tell you, it has a hint of spice in it. And that's about all I can tell you. And it tastes good when it hits the lips. So it's freezing cold here. It's like in the 30s. So, which I like. I like the cold. I'm in shorts and a pullover. So I love the cold. And then, of course, I got my little foo-foo-y sparkling water here. So, yeah. Doug, did you know that Will was such a coffee connoisseur, to put it nicely?
I didn't. I actually listened to a couple of your podcasts, and he looks like a race car driver that just won a race who's been interviewed as he lifted his cup of coffee. It was, yeah. No, I didn't know that, man. I figured him more of maybe a bourbon guy, someone who was a bourbon sniffer or something.
Well, that's for more of the evening time. I do enjoy a nice bourbon or a good beer once in a while, so like 1792 last night, but that's all right.
Nice.
So this morning I am drinking, I'm having a La Croix grapefruit sparkling water, but I also have, in honor of our subject today, my last K-cup of the Thin Blue line from Black Rifle Coffee Company. It's that medium roast, delicious. Since we are doing a debunk for law enforcement, kind of a little homage to them. And Doug, what are you drinking today?
Well, my man card's going to be pulled here. I'm drinking an iced coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. Can't go wrong with a nice, fresh, delicious cup of iced coffee. Just like the race car victory circle, I took a sip. But I did bring with me in my office what I keep on hand is some Black Rifle coffee, equal opportunity coffee drinker. I don't know if you ever heard of One Coffee Nation. One Coffee Nation is owned by veterans, and it's a law enforcement veteran-owned company. It's local here. It's brewed. Yeah, write it down, Will. Brewed here in Somerville, South Carolina, and they're really, they give a lot back to veterans. One of my friends is one of the owners. He's a bomb tech here at a local agency, and a great guy. And his partner is an EOD guy in the Navy. Good coffee. This is called JB Buckshot's Blend. But they have a bunch of different ones. And then we have a local coffee brewer here in Somerville, South Carolina. It's called Coastal Coffee Roasters. And I got some Carolina Morning little sample pack here. So I must say my agency, the agency's not endorsing these coffee makers here. That's me. But all of them drink it because it's here local. And I don't think anybody dislikes coffee in our profession. So.
Yeah, it's definitely the lifeblood of law enforcement. It seems like these that are energy drinks when you work night.
I would say your Bangs and your Monsters, your Red Bulls, all that good stuff. Rockstar.
I would say it's the exact same in the military. Plus, you got to have a can of Copenhagen Straight, in your lip as well. I don't know why I never got on that bandwagon. Coffee never did it for me. Chewing tobacco never did it for me. But I was a huge energy drink connoisseur. Back in the day till I started having some health issues, and they're like, hey, your esophagus is eroding. How many energy drinks? I think they tie it to energy drinks. They're like, how many you drink a day? I'm like, just 5.
Rip it.
Yeah, they're like 5. I was like, yeah. So I barely drink an energy drink anymore, but I think coffee smells wonderful. It just doesn't taste as good as it smells.
It's nothing better than walking in a good coffee joint, and they just ground some coffee beans, man. And they open the window at the drive-through, and it emanates out of the window. So I didn't start drinking coffee until I worked the highway. Even my time in the military, I would drink coffee every now and then. But when I started working the interstate, and you watch traffic go by, it kind of mesmerizes you, makes you tired. I think Will understand. And
highway
hypnosis. So you start drinking coffee or energy drinks, 5 Hour Energy, whatever.
Huh. So the only reason I get away with all like what could be like a ton of speeding tickets is probably because the cop didn't have his coffee or energy drink on him. Because I'm normally, look, I never argue with a cop when he pulls me over. I see the lights. I'm like, here you go. Yes, I was speeding. How fast? I'm usually about 20 over, and yeah, pay my $500 fine and move on. But what I
Nice.
love about the East Coast? I grew up on the West Coast, Doug. So East Coast, and I'm sure you could do it on the West Coast, but every time I've ever gotten a ticket, I've always gotten a lawyer. An old buddy told me this in the military, and they usually reduce it to improper equipment. You still pay your $500 fine, but your insurance doesn't go up.
Interesting.
That's
Um,
changed. That's changed in North Carolina recently, but
so
yeah.
did you pay for those attorneys?
Heck
Or
yeah,
they
I
just
did.
rent? Nah,
Heck
you
yeah, I
wasted
did.
money, man.
Yeah,
Wasted your money.
yeah,
Everybody.
probably, probably.
Well, West Coast may not have. I can't say that.
West Coast, you don't even bother because I mean the tickets are so outrageous, anyways. I mean, I think it's like $500 just to appear in court, and then whatever the traffic fine is and everything else. So, I've only had
Right.
one ticket on the West Coast, believe it or not, in all my days of driving crazy out there, and I think it was like $600-700.
Well, see, what you don't know, Doug, is Jake is an amputee, and he has a driving leg, and it's especially made for him. It has a lead foot on it, so
Yeah.
that's why he drives
That's
like he
that's
does.
I like it.
Yeah, so that's gotten me out. I've used that one time, right around Halloween, like a year or two ago, and the state highway patrol officer let me go. Made him laugh pretty good. So
What state was that in?
I'm here in North Carolina, like Will.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome, dude.
yeah.
That's
So Somerville, you guys host, if I'm correct, you guys hosted the Bassmaster Classic like 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. We had our big claim to fame here is the Flower Town Festival. So we
Okay.
have we bring in a couple 100,000 people right around the same time we have the Cooper River Bridge Run, which is a big bridge run down here in Charleston. It's actually the same weekend. Then they have the Southeastern Wildlife Expo, and it's all around the same time. Obviously, COVID's kicked everything to the curb right now, but yeah, we got a really great place down here, man. Great people live in this town and in Charleston area. Great organization to work for, and people really want to come down here. Charleston's consistently, I think, for over 10 years now, named number one tourist destination in the world by Kanye Ness, which obviously is pretty awesome. People here are really nice. Obviously, we have always ranked in the top 2 or 3 for the most courteous people. So
Yeah, I'll
that's
tell
always
you.
my
I love downtown, like Old Town Charleston. It's my wife's. It's our favorite place to go. I actually was fortunate to do a lot of training down there when I was in the military. I did about 2 or 3 weeks here and there, quite often. And I don't think of when I think of 4th of July now. I think of one 4th of July. My wife and I were down in Old Town Charleston, and you could see off the World War II ship fireworks, and then we stayed at the Charleston Place Hotel, had a little balcony room, and all around the city is just different fireworks displays. The food, I'm a big food guy. The food in Charleston is absolutely incredible. I'd say it's one of,
every cuisine, man.
I just love it. Like you said, the people are really friendly. And hey, and if you're a guy, I think the female to male ratio is like 4-1. So if you're a single younger guy and you're looking for a college, I'd go to, somewhere down in Charleston.
Well, you have College Charleston. It's like that down there. They obviously have the Citadel, and both great learning institutions that are very, very old and have a lot of historic lineage dating back, obviously, to the Civil War and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to
Great
go
town.
diving in the Cooper River for shark's teeth down there. I had a good time.
yeah, they're well known for their Magnodon teeth. They've done a lot of big stories on them here recently, just because of the way that the silt and the mud is here, that it preserves them for millions of years. Pretty cool stuff.
It's a really cool dive. You don't see much, but it's an awesome dive.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
murky.
someone just found one. It made the news here. I don't know if it's
Yeah, they're
North Carolina
big.
or South
Big
Carolina.
Yeah, we actually have here in Somerville, man. We've got some canals. Obviously, this was all used to be underwater, prehistoric times, and they often, because it's muddy, it's very muddy underneath the hard ground. Down, you start getting through the different sediments, and I know this isn't what we're supposed to be on the topic for this week, but
That's all right, man. We all have ADHD, man.
yeah,
It's all
but
gonna
they
go
were
everywhere.
building. They're building a local business here a couple weeks ago, and they found an entire colony of these megalodons with baby megalodon teeth and whatnot that were in like perfect condition. So pretty good stuff, man. For our listeners out there, check it out.
That's awesome. So let's go ahead and move into our topic because we want to get going. So we're gonna kind of bust. Excuse me. We're gonna kind of bust some myths about law enforcement, what you see, especially on TVs and movies.
Don't do that
about
to me,
how
man. Like, Will, come on, man. Like, I love Chicago PD, man.
you just have to learn to separate because especially when I first got in, I quit watching a lot of cop show TVs because it was just like, oh come on, you're just like, really, that's not going to happen type things. So now I take a step back and I let certain things slide and I try not to let it bother me. Like one of my pet peeves is when they call it a clip. I mean, come on, that's just super simple. It's not a clip, right? And it irks me.
What do you mean a clip?
They'll be chasing a magazine in their like Glock or whatever, and they're like, "Hand me another clip. I need more rounds or whatever." And it's just, and I know it's stupid, but something like that just bothers me. But,
Man, you're being real petty this morning. I think you need more coffee.
I probably do. I'm only on my second cup.
So, yeah, I don't know. I thought a clip is a magazine. That's always what I've associated the two with.
You're a weapons guy. What?
It doesn't matter. A clip is just slang for a magazine. Doug, what's your take on this?
Oh man, we call them magazines. Obviously, civilian law enforcement is a lot different than the military. But
I mean, we call them in the military. Don't get me wrong, but if someone
no,
said,
I
hey,
know.
toss me a clip, I'd be like, okay, here you go. Like,
Yeah, we know what it is. I mean, I could say a reload, for you,
yeah,
speed reloader or something. But yeah, I mean, it's the one thing you're talking about, Will, is definitely something that it's make me not want to watch a lot of secular TV. It's funny you say that. I didn't know the topic, but I was turning on 11 o'clock news last night, and I caught the last 5 minutes of a big show on CBS that's named after a special weapons and tactics team. And these guys look like just out of a magazine. And I'm not talking about the magazine clip, but they look like they were fresh out of a magazine. And man, they had this high tech headquarter office they're working out of that looked like the Hall of Justice in a Marvel movie. Just totally fake, man. It just blows my mind. Everybody's wearing these high speed made up uniforms that nobody else would wear. That they were in a fake range and they had all this soundproofing. It was a really nice, it looked like something straight out of, like I was saying, out of Star Trek or something. But no, it's not like that.
I've always been amazed with that show, that Hondo, the lead character. He's always rocking an ACOG. Like, why would you rock an ACOG if you're doing like room clearing?
I don't know if that's the same show I was watching, because I can't say whether that is or not.
It is.
But they had some kind of vehicle that looked like a dune buggy that looked armor plated, that drove like 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. If it's probably the same show, but that stuff doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't happen, man. Doesn't.
So, I've never thought of this, Doug, but I think as you're talking, again, never being in law enforcement, but spending my whole career as a special operator in the military, we're usually like one of the first ones to get the latest and greatest Gucci gear is what we would call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say with the war on police that it is today in the media, do shows like that, I'll name off a few that I kind of watch because I do find them somewhat entertaining, and now you guys are totally going to destroy them for me. But do shows like SWAT or Chicago PD, and any other like of these newer generation cop shows, do they almost paint a bad image of, you hear about, police being militarized now, and there's a small little portion of our population that has an outcry about that. I have no problem with it. I say, hey, you go toe to toe with the bad guys. Like you gotta fight and have the same equipment that they're rocking. But do you think that these shows that portray this greatest technology, and it isn't true, does a disservice to law enforcement around the U.S.?
Well, let me hit this, man. So, what really bothers me is you can watch any show on any of the major networks, and there's a shootout in every show, every single show. And, they're saving their own lives, they're saving someone else's life, but they're in a shootout every show. And we're talking about high powered, weapons, and the bad guys got all the same stuff. I mean, then you watch something like Live PD, that has been taken off television, and it shows all the good we're doing, and you're not seeing these shootouts. And I'm not saying it hasn't happened in the live stream with the buffer, but it's not like that, man. It's not, and people get upset about seeing us do our job in real time. I mean, Cops was on for what, 30 years, and it didn't bother people, and if it did, it sure spun off a lot of other real life reality television shows. But when you have something like Live PD, who did a really good job of portraying law enforcement in a day-to-day, I mean, the most monotonous of calls to life or death situations, saving people's lives, and yet a show like that it ceases to exist right now, where it does show the good we do and the realism of what we do versus Hollywood, with good-looking actors and screen lines and so to answer your question, I don't know that it hurts us, but what does hurt us is when you take a show like Live PD off. If you don't want to watch the show, don't turn it on. Turn the channel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I understand that people are very sensitive right now with a lot of stuff that's going on in communities for law enforcement, but there's so much good that's done out of shows like that versus shows where there's shootouts every single day. I mean, Miami Vice was on for how many years, and Rocket and Tubbs were in shootouts in every single episode.
Yep.
And they were with multinational drug traffickers who were, from all over the Caribbean and South America and Mexico. So it doesn't really matter, man. I mean, we're in such an uphill battle right now in so many ways, and the sensationalization of law enforcement and what does not happen is not what needs to be happening. You need to be showing what we are doing. And if we're making mistakes, man, the good thing about Live PD is you saw them in real time. Within a buffer time, you saw this stuff happening, and you could see the real time of someone making a split-second decision based off the information they were provided at the time that you're seeing it. And that should help the community better understand how quick it is for us to have to make a life or death decision that could affect our lives and somebody else's lives for the rest of our lives. And so that's kind of where I am with that, man. It's, everybody watches television, I think one way or another, but what's weird to me is I talk to people who cross all lines, not just in law enforcement, but people who citizens, and they love shows like Live PD. I mean,
I love it.
They were in Berkeley County, which is an adjoining agency, and just because they were there, everybody thought we were on it too. And we had just got done filming to do a live show we were doing too. And obviously, when that show got pulled by their network, our show was put on hold too. So it's really a travesty, I think, when you're not going to show the whole picture. But there needs to be transparency. They want us to wear body-worn cameras. Why not show people what we really do and let them make the decision whether we should do it or not, or whether we did something or not, right?
Yeah, I remember one of the first episodes of Live PD. I think it was either South Carolina or Georgia. It wasn't, Live PD wasn't even there, but it was an officer he had glasses with a camera built in, and he's going to talk to a gentleman. The guy's walking away from him, and he's like, "Hey, man, show me your hands, show me your hands." And the guy turns around out of his jacket, pulls a gun, and shoots him. And just, you hear, well, why don't you just wound him or shoot him in the leg a lot these days? And maybe we'll get into that myth as to why you're not trained that way. Being in the military, our rules of engagement are completely wide open, right? Completely different than a police force. And that has to do with the mission set, right, of what we're doing. However, those split-second decisions, right, are, do you really have time to, when that gun is getting pulled or your life is threatened or someone else's life is threatened, to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to wound him. I'm just going to shoot him in the kneecap. I think I agree with you. Live PD was a great show. I love watching Cops as a kid growing up. And hopefully I've heard that Dan Abrams is in talks with other networks, so hopefully they bring that show back. And like you said, I would say it kind of shows like the mundane stuff of the day-to-day stuff that cops are doing, trying to always you hear the word de-escalation thrown around a lot, and cops need more de-escalation training. I think if people would watch some of these live PD shows, I think that's what cops do 99% of the time is de-escalate a situation. Just me, average Joe citizen, sitting on my couch, drinking a frothy little Pellegrino water, watching it. But yeah, I don't know.
Will, what you haven't said much, Will. You're quiet, buddy.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think that Cops was good, but they cut it and edited it to make all the exciting stuff come up. Where I think real PD or live PD, had kind of gave us an avenue to see, like Jake was saying, how mundane, how easy. I mean, how boring a lot of the calls were, and then it also showed how it can go from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds. Where you go to a noise complaint, and the next thing you know, you're in a fight for your life. And I like that about live PD. And I think where TV versus reality comes in, they give the perception in Hollywood that cops are out there getting in chases and shooting bad guys every week, where a lot of cops go their whole career without ever even firing their pistol or their weapon in against somebody. It's happening more and more, but there's still, I mean, I don't know how many officer involved shootings your department had last year. I think mine had one, maybe. And so,
well, we just our state law enforcement division here in my state just came out. I saw them yesterday where assaults on police officers were up 20% from last year. I think line of duty deaths were up on a national level. I think almost 7%. I could be wrong on that number, but
and you wonder what was it the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that.
It's gone up every year.
The last 10, 20 years, you've just seen that number increase. We
had some numbers that had kind of stabilized in the last probably a few years ago, but we've seen them dramatically increase in the last few years with different violence that's going on, obviously. But talking about these shows, Will, I agree. I grew up watching Cops. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. My dad was he's a retired police officer now, but I remember growing up thinking that's what my dad does. I wanted to do it. And you're right, it was all cut and edited. It took probably thousands upon thousands of hours just to get a whole season in of filming just to get, 4 hours of raw footage, whereas live PD had 20, 30 cameras in the field, and they would just uniquely go to whichever one had activity going on in live time. But there's a lot of those guys that would be on the show that would never be seen because they would be working a beat where nothing happened or they couldn't get anything to transpire. So that, and you talked about, things being monotonous, Jake, probably 95% of this profession is very, very, very monotonous. I think people would be very surprised to know how much paperwork we do for everything we have to do. And so you have this 10 to 15% of high level, high adrenaline rush, go, make a decision. And then you have tons of paperwork, lots of, shaking hands and talking to people. You're talking about de-escalation. I mean, that's our number one thing in this profession is to be able to do it. If you can't talk to people, you're not going to last this profession, period. You're just not. If you come across as a jerk or power hungry person out there on the streets will eat you alive. They really will. And I think all of us in this profession kind of go through this phase where we think we own the world. I'm not speaking for you, Will, but I think everybody, when they get into it, they think they're going to go out and just make this big difference, and they're not going to let people talk to them a certain way. And when you really understand, it comes down to it is, yeah, you are going to let people talk to you that way from time to time because you have to, because we're held to a higher standard than anybody else. And I think that's the biggest thing people don't understand is I think now more than ever, body worn cameras has really, everybody was against it in law enforcement, and now nobody wants to work without it. Because nobody trusts the word. They're afraid it's going to be someone else's word against ours, and people are going to believe the other people before they believe law enforcement. And that's just, kind of the culture of society right now. But, when what you noticed, guys, and I know Will, is when body-worn cameras came out and they started to become prevalent, especially when they started becoming mandatory, is you saw that the public was seeing what we were doing and they're like, holy cow, I didn't even realize, things that, and it's protected citizens too. I mean, it's changed a lot of the way we do things. I mean, you got to look at some of these high profile officer involved deaths that have occurred here around the country. And I mean, let's not tiptoe around it. George Floyd, some of the other ones, you have footage, body worn camera footage that's showing, what the view of the officer is, but then you've got the view of somebody filming from a different angle, and they're seeing one thing and someone else, and you really don't know what's going through the mind of these officers either. So you have these cameras, they're out there, they're to maintain the integrity of what we do, but also protect us from litigation and to help us recreate situations for court and to prosecute people that do bad things. So all in all, we kind of went full circle, but I truly believe body worn cameras is probably the best asset we've got in this profession right now. And look, I mean, let's just be real here, guys. I was telling someone the other day, you sit here and pick on law enforcement for something somebody did on a camera, something someone said on a camera. And yeah, they said what they said and what they did may have been wrong. But I'm going to let you as a civilian put a body worn camera on you, and I want you to go to work 8 or 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday.
No way.
And I want to see if you can get away with not saying something you should not have said, or an inappropriate joke, or something that, and again, we're humans, we're humans just like you are. And I think I challenge anybody and to even think about what that would be like to live your life under that type of scrutiny. And just think about that and understand that's the kind of men and women who sign up for this job. They already know that's going to be the case, and they're still signing up to do this. That's a special person, guys. I mean,
for sure. Absolutely. When I was younger, right before I joined the military, about a year before, I did a ride along with my best friend's brother, who was a SWAT officer and a cop out in El Dorado County in California. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, like, there wasn't a bigger thrill than, chasing a stolen car through the foothills of California. But other than that night, I mean, I think I saw like my first like live or dead body, like freshly, the guy OD'd. But watching him and the way he interacted with people, really, I've always had respect for cops, but really like kind of put police on a whole nother level of, again, I think these shows, right? You have these jackass kind of prickish cops that are depicted on some of these shows. And again, Doug, I never really thought about that, how these shows kind of depict your guys' profession, some in a positive light, but then there's a lot of like subtle negative things. And I would say the same thing if you watch SEAL Team 6 and some of this other stuff. It's so...
they have the stereotypes.
Yeah, it's so overrated. But that, doing that ride-along, and I don't know if ride-alongs are still allowed these days or not because of stuff, but hey, if you're a citizen in your area, wherever you live, you want to know what a cop's, what their day-to-day life is like, go see if you can do a ride-along with them.
Yeah, we have a Citizens Academy that we put on for that purpose. We try to attract citizens to come and learn more about what we do, and that opens the door for transparency. If we had a show that showed us in a shootout every single week, it would in real time. If it really happened, we would be in a lot of trouble. This profession would be in a lot of trouble. That's just not how it is. And I agree with you. I watched some of these shows, and I don't say their names, but like the one you just mentioned. Yeah, I mean, if you're in the military, I don't really want to see that. It's so unrealistic. I don't want to see a fake, camaraderie that, I mean, you try to, that caters to people. It may help for recruitment for the military for people that don't know any better. But truth of the matter is, it is a bunch of recreation, high level Hollywood stuff that just probably doesn't happen. And if
cool
it does,
guy stories, man. Cool guy stories.
Yeah, going back to the video cameras, I know I actually preferred them, especially you know where I work, Doug, and what was going on at the time. I was out there on the interstate, so I readily welcomed cameras in my car and everything. I mean, we treated every stop we did like a crime scene. We processed it like a crime scene. It was kind of over the top, but I'm glad because of all the scrutiny we were under. Technology in these shows is what really gets me. is like you look at CSI. I know it's not on anymore, but there's other ones. They get a DNA swab, and by the end of the day in their time, they have the result back. They're getting all this information.
Doesn't happen.
It takes.
If you could, first of all, that's agencies have crime labs, and they are so backed up with DNA right now from sexual assaults and homicides. Yep. Anything where there's DNA transfer or anything where it's in a case, you're talking backlog of months, and you could have a bunch of chemists and lab workers working side by side, and there is just so much that gets turned in, and these states and these agencies that handle this type of stuff are overwhelmed. And I'm telling you, it's just so fake. There's not something you pull up at a crime scene and you touch something and it pulls someone's picture up and you're like, oh, that's who did it, and they solve an entire murder in 10 minutes on the show. It just doesn't happen like that. I mean, you get lucky every now and then with that technology. And you're talking about being in the teams and a special operator, Jake. You guys do get the Cadillac of equipment. You get everything first, and your budget is endless. And you guys still probably didn't see half the stuff that you see on these shows that people supposedly had. And if you did, it took years and years for it to be moved into the team. So you're right, man.
Yeah, like the fingerprint things. You're seeing more cops. I remember like right before Live PD went off the air, they had the little fingerprint scanners, right? We didn't get those in Afghanistan, I'd say, till after if my memory's right, after 2010. And that was really because we're building a huge database in every theater we were in, mainly because of IED makers, and we're pulling. We're doing like site exploitations on every IED, every house we were hitting, everything like that. Every person we came in contact with, we had we called them little baseball cards, right? And we'd fingerprint them, take a picture, and upload it to this huge FBI database. But, 9 years later, roughly, that's slowly trickling out to the law enforcement community. And
we've got a few of them, and they have to be passed around. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There's a lot of myths out there about these shows, and it happens this way and that way. And don't get me wrong, we have some pretty high-speed equipment. There's no doubt about it. But it's expensive when you start talking about taxpayers' dollars and budgets. Unfortunately, it goes down the list, and you got to prioritize what we really need right now, or if we can do things with the old skill the old age-old police training that we have, So yeah, I mean, it's important.
I was talking to the director here of the BLED Academy at the community college near where I live, and he was a former SWAT commander outside of Jersey, and he said he did a training one time down in Georgia, this huge complex, and a bunch of fifth group guys were down there, and he was blown away, right, about their level of precision, their timing, everything, all the equipment, everything they had, and his unit was invited. They couldn't afford to go down to this training center. It was a privately owned training center. And he, that was his comment was, the amount of money you guys get to train and for equipment, we could only wish for, we could only wish for like a tenth of that. So,
that's a good lead in for talking about 1033. It's a big topic right now. Will, I know you've mentioned it to me, and what this equipment that leaves the military and makes its way into the hands of law enforcement in America. And look, I mean, there's a lot of people that get really upset about this stuff. I mean, it's a pretty hot topic. But I get a lot of questions about what we do with the things that we have and how do we get it. And kind of like you were talking about, Jake, I mean, these operators in the field and in the military units, they get this equipment and they use it, and the next greatest and latest thing comes out. So they start using that, and that stuff has to go somewhere. So that stuff was all bought with taxpayers' dollars, right? So it's going to go sit in a box or get sold to another country.
Or get shredded.
And shredded or buried, right? Literally, we've buried, I don't know how many mine-resistant vehicles in the desert in foreign countries, right? But that stuff comes back, does make its way back here, and it just sits in a boneyard, right? So There's helicopters. There's obviously, things that can be used. Our mine resistant vehicle we have an MRAP, and we use it with absolute transparency. It's not hidden in some secret garage that we don't want anybody to know about, and we're only going to take it out for SWAT missions, and it's only going to be driven to and from. We've actually used ours and exploited it to when we feed the hungry. We call stuff the MRAP. So we'll bring it to different locations, and we have people bring food, and we stuff the back of the MRAP. During Christmas, we stuff the MRAP with Christmas presents at Target, and it breaks down the barriers when these kids get to come and climb in it. And when National Night Out, and even at the Flowertown Festival, I got asked the other day, why do we have it at the Flowertown Festival parked in the middle of the road? Well, I'll tell you why. We've learned from Nice, France, when they drove a bulldozer, dump truck through a crowd of people, how many people can be killed and maimed from that. We've learned a lot from the military and what's happened in other countries. So, you take a very heavy vehicle like that, put it in the center of the road, and you flank it by fire trucks. That's why it's there. So why not put an A-frame sign out there and explain what this does? And this is how we use it to rescue people when it's flooding in these low-lying areas, and how we rescue people if we have a hostage situation and we need to get in there and get somebody's family pulled from that area, or to drive our emergency services unit up close to a target location without being injured. So why not use this equipment, right? Obviously, there's long guns and different things that come out and get distributed out, and we use those too. Because look, we have to be able to have what these other people have. People on the street have things. We need to be able to have these things too. And there's our officers are properly trained how to handle and shoot these weapons with precision. And a lot of the stuff we deal with can't be met with small arms fire, which would be your handguns and whatnot. So we do use that. We do use the night vision. We do use the sights, the ACOGs and whatnot, but they're used properly. They're properly serialized and inventoried. But hey, the things that never get talked about is we use their laptops. We get laptops and different things like that from the government as well. And I'm not just speaking for my agency. I'm talking about law enforcement in general. So you're going to have your naysayers, and there's nothing wrong with that. I want to question what the government's doing with their money and their equipment, but that's why we have transparency with what we do in my agency. Is we're not going to hide something and let people just see it when we need it. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
I think
Doug,
that's where it goes back to the Hollywood perception is all they do is see the MRAPs and stuff like that. Oh, they're being used in SWAT operations. They're being used for this and high action sequence. I get it's entertainment, but it gives that perception out there that's what everybody's using it for and the only reason they're using it for.
So it cracks me up on some of those shows, like
paints a picture. So
yeah, like SWAT, right? They use that MRAP there, or that RG-33. I can't ever really tell the difference. And that they act like that thing has a supercharged power engine in it. They can't, it takes a while for those things to get up and go. They're not, you don't hit the gas and boom, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. No, man, that thing takes a long, long time to get up and run. Doug, as you're talking, it made me think of, I had a conversation with a congressman years ago out in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, after they lost a few of their cops. I helped with a buddy of mine raise money for the Baton Rouge Police Department to get body armor. Not the soft skin one that, the 9mm soft skin
level 4,
but the ceramic plates that, that the military wears. And I sat down with a congressman. I'd just gotten back from, I think, Afghanistan. It was right around 2015, 16. And I said, why are we shredding plates over in Afghanistan? The drawdown was going on then. We shred a lot of the equipment, like you said, the MRAPs. They're putting $1 million turret on them and then literally destroying them because the government had signed a contract with whatever defense contractor over there and had to fulfill the contract. But that conversation is like, this is a piece of life-saving equipment. I would much rather. I care more about a local sheriff or a local police officer getting shot and killed because he didn't have the ceramic plates, but yet we're giving them to third world countries, to these fighting forces over there to make them like us. And the reality is that, in Jake Green's reality, it's hard to do. It's far and few between. But why don't we take those plates? This life-saving equipment that can, even if it saves one police officer's life, in my opinion, it's worth the millions of dollars of transporting that stuff over here, instead of shredding it or giving it to other people.
And Jake, let me just say this, man. That even our MRAP, we don't have the turret on top of it anymore. We took the bars off the windows, and you don't have to do that. We're like, look, we have bulletproof, we have glass on it. We don't need more than that. But it's not an offensive vehicle; it's a defensive vehicle, right? It doesn't have weaponry on it. The same as these vests you're talking about. It's a protective piece of equipment. And let me tell you something, eye-opening enough. We've got active shooter kits for our entire police department. We're pretty blessed. We have Kevlar helmets. We are geared up, and we bought that stuff. We had 1033, but we also have bought a lot of that stuff. And even with the recent civil unrest, we have a civil disturbance team. We started out with 1033 equipment, that had been handed down. It was probably 20, 30 years old, but it got the job done, right? So with the recent unrest, we've purchased more gas delivery devices and less lethal equipment, as well as protective equipment for officers to wear. But eye-opening enough for me was when I showed up at a homicide scene a few months ago, and I got there probably within 20 to 30 minutes of they were just now transporting the deceased to the hospital, hopefully, rendering life-saving effort. And when I got there, the firemen from my fire department for my city were all wearing active shooter kits. And of course they weren't black, but I think they were fluorescent color or red, but said fire on them. And I'm like, what? That woke me up. When you have paramedics and firemen that have to wear that to go save somebody's life because they're in fear for their own life, because when someone is shooting at somebody, they don't care what badge you're wearing. They don't look, oh, that's a policeman, I'm going to shoot him. They look at fire, they look at EMS. I mean, there's a lot of times where people get killed where they thought they were law enforcement, and they were not. So we're in a world right now where we have to be protected to be able to save people's lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I, in my opinion, is let's do all we can. Will knows this, and some of the listeners who've been on the show. I help with a nonprofit. It's called Operation Open Water. I'm not here to push that nonprofit whatsoever, but being a military veteran and one that was injured in combat, everyone likes to say thank you, and I appreciate it. And I know all the veterans love to hear that. And what helped us start this nonprofit was we looked at first responders, and not a whole lot of gratitude is given. And here, people like you and people like Will and all the other first responders that are out there, you guys see this stuff day in and day out. You don't get a break. You're always on guard. You can never let your guard down, especially in today's society. And so, in my opinion, again, is anything we can do to protect our first responders is absolutely almost. It's necessary. There shouldn't even be a question asked. I'm not saying like we have to give everyone the latest and greatest technology, but let's give them the basics. If we're sending our soldiers downrange, and there's even a little bit of a chance of them getting shot, we give them body armor. Well, the chances of a cop getting shot today, Will, you had some of the statistics. We were talking a little bit yesterday. Those numbers, and Doug, like you were saying, every year the attacks on officers and first responders keep going up and up. Why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we protecting them with our taxpayer dollars?
Awesome. You can keep going, Will. I'm good for some time, man. Shoot some more questions if you want.
Okay.
So I'll ask one real quick. Are undercover cops, do they have to tell you that they're undercover?
No, and why would they? That's a silliness. So dangerous. First of all, police officers don't really. It used to be a badge of honor to tell everybody you're a cop when you're off duty. Even you'll see now it's become more. We got our guards up. We're even more protective of ourselves because of what happened to us, our family. People find out where we live, we get doxxed, right? Yep. And next thing you know, we're being targeted personally. So we don't tell people usually what we do when we're off duty, much less when we're undercover. And
like in a sting operation, because you hear that all the time. Like, hey, are you a cop? Are you a cop?
Yeah, that's a bunch of bull, man.
Okay, good.
It's so dangerous. I mean, your life is truly in jeopardy And that's one thing the shows do get right. If you watch shows like movies, like a Donnie Brasco or something, where of course it's a remake, but it's based on a true story, where this special agent was under deep cover and his life depended on it, and they did depict that properly. That is truly how it is. These guys are dangerous that they're dealing with. They're criminals. Even their confidential informants that they're dealing with are criminals that have shown that they can show that they have valuable information and it's been credible in the past. But they're at the end of the day, they're criminals trying to work off a charge or to over somebody else. So even when they are dealing with somebody who may be a confidential informant, it's dangerous. So no, they're not doing that. That's a bunch of bull. And hey, let if people don't hear this podcast and they're bad guys, let them think that, but that's not the case.
Well, you think about what is it, Kiki Marone, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
DEA.
They found out that he was undercover, but it got him killed. So
yeah, is he the one who infiltrated like the Mongols or one of the motorcycle gangs, or was
no, he was DEA down in Mexico, down in El Paso area, Juarez.
Yeah, the Juarez cartel. They got him. Yeah, so another kind of misconception I think in a lot of shows is there's always seems to be that one dirty cop, right? That one that pushes the boundaries and stuff like that. And the reality is in today's, I'm sure I know there are a few bad apples out there, don't get me wrong, but I can't think of another profession where you actually have an active unit that's out there policing the police, like internal affairs, right? Most like lawyers and doctors, they have review boards and stuff like that, but they're not actually out there kind of policing each other.
Yes. So, first of all, with this profession right here, there's nothing that a good cop hates more than a dirty cop.
Yep.
And there's so many more good cops than there are bad cops, right? And I can tell you right now, everybody talks about internal affairs. Oh, you have to go to IA, IEB, see all IED, see all these things on different television shows, right? But IA is just the official unit in a lot of these professional standards units within organizations that are your quality control, kind of like your review boards for doctors and the American Bar Association or whatever, those things, right? But truth of the matter is, every single supervisor, just like when you're in battle with your operators, they are your quality control. A courageous leader, somebody who's standing there, who's reading, who sees you do something, hears you do something, heard you did something. It's their duty and they're obligated to look into that, right? Or if they're reading a report and they see something, read something that wasn't properly done with procedure, if you have feckless leadership, then you're going to have failures, right? I can tell you right now, the stuff you see on some of these really sensationalized shows that are very dramatic, they glorify bad behavior because, hey, the viewer wants get that cop, right? But the truth of the matter is, we do get those guys. It's very rare that a bad apple turns into a situation where you do see it hit the national news that they are still a police officer when something happened. I wish people knew probably how the percentage is so different for police officers who are weeded out of this profession versus that people think are actually in this profession. We do not tolerate maladaptive behavior. People who are non-conformists are not going to stay in this profession. It's just the way it is. It's that way in the military. And we have checks and balances, and yeah, they could fail just like any other job. You could work in a supermarket and have somebody stealing the entire inventory out from underneath your nose, right? But you have to have people in quality control positions. But it starts with leadership. Your frontline leaders, supervisors, are the ones that are making those decisions, fixing that, right?
Absolutely. So
I think I didn't realize either on that note is like, you guys, the local departments have internal affairs, but then the FBI has their own department that kind of looks into bad cops, not only themselves, but into local cops as well. And I only found that out. My sister's an FBI agent, and she works on hate crimes and bad cops. And she's told me about some of the cases that are, public knowledge out there that she's looked at. And it's, I think you have a lot of media scrutiny on you, a lot of bad publicity, but then even what I think is done right, Doug, and I think you said it, was no one hates a bad cop worse than a good cop. No one hates, in my profession, no one hated a crappy soft operator than a good soft operator. There's nothing we want to do more than kick that dude out, take his tab, whatever we could do to kick them out. And I think when you have, we all look at tribes, right? We start with a family and you build out and build out. As a law enforcement officer, you guys are part of a special certain tribe. And anyone ruins that reputation or puts a bad stain on it, there's nothing more you want to do than push that person away and get them away. So I think that's an interesting point, Will, where you guys actually have within your own agencies people to investigate your own profession and making sure that everyone's doing the right thing, doing what they swore to uphold.
It's so easy too to create a culture within an organization where everybody has done something a certain way for so long that the rule of law becomes skewed, and then all of a sudden you realize, we're all operating over the line. But that is why we have checks and balances. That's why we move leaders around. If you keep one leader with a unit or a team for too long, that can't happen, right? People become lackadaisical. They start to turn an eye to it. So we don't do that. We constantly move, and that way it keeps things kind of shaken to where you have that fresh set of eyes coming in and keep an eye on things. And look, when you have checks and balances, upwards and lower tier of leadership, one above you and two below you, you're going to have that ability to do that. So you're exactly right.
Excellent. So one last question to kind of touch on before we let you go, Doug. I know it's a huge pet peeve of mine. I don't know how you feel about it, but there's that misconception that the police are responsible for the bonds and the sentences that criminals, that people that they've arrested get. I know me personally, it was just a pet peeve of mine. Like, I remember one night working weekends, I had to arrest the same guy every single night that weekend for breaking into cars because he kept getting dismissed from the magistrate. So most people, I guess, don't realize that magistrates or JPs or judges or whatever you bring them before, wherever your jurisdiction is, are the ones who are actually setting the bond. And police have nothing to do with the bonds, whether it's a cash bond or a secured or unsecured. And we don't have anything to do with the sentencing hearing. We might be able to give our opinion, but that's totally up to the judges. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, and I know each state's different, but there is a purpose and a reason why the legislative or judicial branch is different than the executive branch, right? Why we have those different forms of government, and one doesn't control the other. So obviously you have your judicial branch, which is going to be your judges, and that's going to be your court system, right? So they handle all of the charges that you make. You have put a writ in front of the judge, and the judge will make that determination on what their bond is. And bond conditions are set based off of flight risk, a danger to society. Does this person have a job or something that's going to help keep them out of trouble, or recidivism, any of these other things, if they're on parole. These are all things they take into consideration. But you know what? Not one of those things has anything to do with law enforcement. All we do is bring that complaint before the judge, and the judge will make the determination at a bond hearing. Now, the only thing I know we do that's done here is we can make a bond recommendation. For example, if someone behaved very badly and injured one of our officers, or we think there's a propensity they're going to go back and recommit crimes, then we can certainly say we're asking for a surety bond for this person, which obviously the way that works, as you know, would not be a cash bond or a personal recognizance bond where someone just gets let go on their recognizance that they're going to show up on their court date and not commit any crimes, right? So usually when someone is a flight risk or someone who's a danger to society, then they will get a surety bond, and based on the fines or bonds that are set by whatever that state has already in place, that'll be what that's based off of. Usually when someone gets a surety bond, they'll pay 10% of whatever that bond is. For example, if it's a $10,000 bond, they'll pay 10% if they get a bondsman. And then the bondsman is now responsible for making sure that person shows up to court, or they're going to be out $10,000 or $1,000, $10,000. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not us. We don't have anything to do with that.
No, I just remember, I hear it all the time. Oh, he's arrested, but now he's out on bond. Why aren't you guys doing your job? And it's just, I think there's just that misconception of.
Yeah, it's frustrating us too. I mean, a lot of times it's the law is very, very well written, or spelled out, I should say, maybe not well written, but spelled out that we cannot make that decision, because that would cloud the process of judicial fairness, right, and due process.
Doug, I know we got to wrap this up because you've actually gone over your time. I know you have meetings. I can't think.
No, that's good, man. I'd love to come back.
Absolutely. I think a great conversation, and literally from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And thank you to all your officers and all the officers, past and present, who literally put their line on line to protect the U.S. citizens here at home. So I can't thank you guys enough. I enjoyed this conversation. I think we could go on for hours and hours and hours. And next time I'm down in Charleston, definitely would love to grab a beer and hang out with you. And, maybe keep this conversation going. So thank you very much. Will, you want to wrap this up?
Hey, Will, before you talk, man, I just want to say something about Will. Will's a humble guy, and I know he's not the subject of this podcast, but Will, he was struck by a vehicle while in the course of his duties, and suffered very, very traumatic injuries to his body. And I just had the most admiration for a man like him who persevered. He had metal all in his body, and he's persevered, and he's made a great comeback to be where he is. And I have the utmost respect for someone like Will, obviously for you, Jake, too, for what you've been through. But just talking about from the law enforcement front, somebody who's persevered and done a good job making it back in society. So are we still recording, or I saw he dropped off?
Yeah. I think Will kind of dropped off, but yeah, we're still recording. So
so that, and then obviously today is the end of watch for my father-in-law, who was killed in line of duty here at my agency, November 19, 2002. Him and William Bolin Bell and a deputy from an adjoining agency, Eugene Wright from Berkeley County Sheriff's Office, were changing a tire for a woman about 6 o'clock in the evening on this night almost 20 years ago. And a driver who had their license revoked by the state for medical conditions careened off the road, struck both of them and killed both of them. So yeah, it's a dangerous job, man. And today's a solemn day for me and my family. But it's a constant reminder that, hey, life is precious. I know you know that. You've lost a lot of your comrades. You almost got killed. Same with Will. And so, man, it's just great to be a part of a country where we have patriots serving to protect our country and our home front, and who protect our streets and our homes. So, man, it's been a great opportunity for me to be able to be on this podcast with you guys.
Doug, don't know what to say and how to end it. So thank you and your family, honestly, for
right on, brother,
for paying that ultimate sacrifice. So for our listeners out there, please don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at youtube.com. Search for the Coffee Squad. Please comment and subscribe. We want to hear your thoughts and your opinions on these podcasts and what you'd like us to talk about. You can also listen and subscribe to us at the coffeesquadpodcast.com, or search Security Matters with the Coffee Squad on your favorite podcast platform. So give us a like on Facebook. And also we are on Instagram at coffee_squad_podcast. So we look forward to next week's discussion. Doug, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart and Will's heart. So have a good one. We'll be in touch.
You too, man. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.